Welcome to Echoes of the Past, where history isn't just old, it's oddly fascinating.
From forgotten facts to bizarre backstories, we dig into the dusty corners of time so
So you
you
don't
don't have
have
to.
to. I'm Jody Lynn, your amateur historian and full-time trivia hoarder.
And I'm Ephraim here for the facts and the fun.
So let's rewind the clock and press play on the past. But before we dive in, a quick heads up. This episode covers topics like ritual abuse accusations, mass hysteria, religious extremism, and historical violence. While we approach these topics with care and historical context, some content may be disturbing to sensitive listeners.
If you're not in the headspace for this one, we totally understand. Feel free to skip and come back another time. Take care of yourself first.
And as always, if you hear us giggling or laughing at something, we're either laughing at the cats behind us, or we're very uncomfortable about the spot that we're talking about, or making fun of the people who are just being silly. So, before we can dig into the history, panic, and pop culture, let's set the stage. What is the occult?
The word occult comes from the Latin occultus, meaning hidden or secret, and that's really the heart of it. The occult refers to knowledge and practices believed to be hidden from ordinary understanding, often dealing with the mystical, spiritual, or arcane.
We're talking about things like alchemy, astrology, divination, tarot cards, rune casting, scrying, spirit communication, hermetic philosophy, and ceremonial magic. These aren't necessarily evil or satanic, though they're often lumped into that box.
Exactly. Occult practices have existed across cultures and periods of time, sometimes blending with religion and sometimes standing completely apart from it. In many ways, the occult is humanity's attempt to reach into the unknown to explore what lies beyond the physical world.
And that includes attempts to tap into hidden forces, whether through ancient grimoires, astral projection, ritual circles, or just trying to align your energy with the universe through a planetary chart.
But here's the kicker. While the occult is often feared or misunderstood, it's deeply tied to the development of science, medicine, and even philosophy. Alchemy, for instance, gave us the foundation of modern chemistry.
In astrology, it laid the groundwork for astronomy, so before we demonize the hidden, we should remember that what's considered strange or spooky today might have been tomorrow's science in disguise.
Speaking of unlocking hidden energy, if you're diving into occult texts at 2 a.m. or scripting your latest episode while trying to keep your third eye open, you're going to need something a little stronger than caffeine jitters and a sugar crash.
That's where Debbie comes in. No sugar, no artificial dyes, no crash, just clean, focused energy to help you summon your best self. No ritual circle required.
Whether you're decoding a grimoire or just trying to survive Monday, Debbie's got your back, with over 15 delicious flavors custom built for focus and clarity.
Visit w.gg and use code Echoes of the Past, no spaces, at checkout for 10% off your order. Let's power your mind without the chaos magic.
All right, now we've decoded the meaning of the occult and brewed some energy into our veins.
Let's step back in time, because occult practices didn't just pop up in spooky movies. They have a deep global roots that go back thousands of years.
From ancient Egyptian tombs to Renaissance scholars conjuring angels, we're about to uncover how occult traditions developed across the world.
Okay, so we've peeled back the veil on what the occult actually is. Let's take a journey through history, like we're saying. Now, of course, these didn't just pop out of nowhere. They've existed in some form across cultures, continents, and centuries.
From ancient death rituals to esoteric Renaissance experiments, the occult has always been humanity's way of asking the big question: what lies beyond the veil and how can we reach it?
In ancient Egypt, magic, or Heka, wasn't considered supernatural. It was a divine force gifted by the gods, woven into daily life and religious practice.
The Book of the Dead is a perfect example. It's not a book in the modern sense, but a collection of spells, rituals, and instructions meant to guide souls safely into the afterlife.
Priests and scribes would often act as mediators between the physical and spiritual realms, using amulets, sigils, and ceremonial rites to harness energy or protect the dead.
Fast forward to ancient Greece and Rome, and we're talking about the mystery religions like the Eleusinian mysteries dedicated to Demeter and Persephone.
I have to say this real quick. Anytime that I see that, I say Persephone in my mind and not how you just said it. But now that you've said that, I can't say it how I usually say it. And I know it's wrong, but that doesn't look like what it would say in my head. So when you said it a second ago, it made me like short circuit a second. These weren't open religions. They were secretive, and oh Lord, Secretive initiatory rites, often involving altered states of consciousness, symbolic death and rebirth, and knowledge kept hidden from the uninitiated.
You also had the Orphic and
Dionysian?
Dionysian rites, blending music, wine, and ecstasy into spiritual transcendence. Think early ceremonial magic meets psychological transformation.
I think that's also where there's like a form of, I guess, being. It starts with an H, but it comes from that as well, where it's basically like you live in like your best life. Like if you want to do this, like get drunk every single day because you're living your best life, have multiple sex partners, do all these things that make your life fantastic, air quotes.
Isn't that just hedonism?
That word, thank you. Hedonism. That's also kind of part of that. That's kind of where that stemmed from. Sorry, you just said that. Here's here's where things get complicated. In medieval Europe, occult knowledge didn't disappear. It just went underground. As Christianity spread, many ancient or pagan practices were recast as demonic or heretical.
But it didn't stop people from studying astrology, numerology, and alchemy, especially in monasteries. They just labeled it natural philosophy.
This was also when grimoires, magical handbooks, started appearing. Think of the Picatrix, Key of Solomon, or the Ars Notoria. They blended celestial science, prayer, and ceremonial magic.
And one of the horror movie franchises, I think the Conjuring series, and Hereditary, they use a version of the uh, Key of Solomon, but they just call it something else
Really?
in the different movies. Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Uh,
I think we bring that up later on.
the Renaissance saw a major revival of occult philosophy. Think names like John Dee, the advisor to Queen Elizabeth I, who tried to speak with angels using a language called Enochian, spelled Enochin.
Yep. Or Paracelsus, who merged alchemy, medicine, and mysticism into what we'd now call holistic healing.
And let's not forget the Hermetic texts, rediscovered during this time, ancient writings supposedly authored by Hermes Trismegistus. These people and their freaking
Names?
whack-ass names, which laid the foundation of ceremonial magic, astrology, and occult cosmology.
I do have to say, as somebody who has watched anime my whole life, anytime I see alchemy, all I can think of is the Full Metal Alchemist and them just sticking random body parts together and it becomes a thing.
Mm-hmm.
That is all I can think about every time that pops up. By the 1800s, interest in the occult surged again. You had the Theosophical, that is not Theosophical Society, founded by Helena Blavatsky, which mixed Eastern mythicism, spiritual evolution, and cosmic energy.
Then came the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn in the late 1800s, a secret society where members including poet W.B. Yeats and the occultist Aleister Crowley practiced ceremonial magic, divination, and astral travel.
I'm not going to lie, that name sounds pretty bomb.
Aleister Crowley?
No, the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn.
Oh.
Sounds like you're some, I don't know, knight in shining armor about to go defeat some evil god or something.
Just sounds like a Dark Souls lore thing.
Yeah. And in the mid-1900s, Crowley's philosophy, dilemma, influenced the rise of chaos magic, modern Wicca, and even pop culture portrayals of the magician archetype.
By the 1970s and 80s, you had a spiritual supermarket, tarot, astrology, Kabbalah, Wicca, and even UFO cults. The line between religion, counterculture, and occultism became pretty blurry.
But with that surge of interest came fear and backlash. As occult practices gained visibility, so did suspicion and more panic.
And history shows us what happens when society starts looking for someone to blame. Up next, the courtroom. We'll explain how occult practices, real or imagined, landed people in prison or worse. When the occult crosses into public fear, it doesn't just make headlines. It shows up in courtrooms and some of the most infamous legal battles in history.
Sometimes the accused were genuine practitioners of esoteric traditions, and sometimes they were just caught in the wrong place during a wave of mass panic. Let's start with one of the earliest high-profile cases, the Knights Templar in 1307. Once protectors of Christian pilgrims, they were accused of occult worship, spitting on the cross and invoking demonic forces.
Were they actually practicing any occult? Probably not. but King Philip IV of France owed them a lot of money. The charges were a convenient way to seize their assets and disband the order.
This case became a blueprint. Accuse someone of heresy or secret dark practices, and suddenly you had legal grounds to imprison, torture, or execute them. And of course, anybody who's ever played video games knows quite a bit about the Knights Templar.
Yeah.
Especially from all of the,
Assassin's
20 different Assassin's Creeds now?
Well, they kind of, they're still the antagonists, kind of. But I feel like in the later games, they just kind of take a back seat to the overall plot.
Yeah.
Like Brotherhood or Assassin's Creed 3, they were kind of still the antagonists. Black Flag, they're kind of there still, like in the modern sections of the game, but you don't really pay attention to those parts. And yeah, they're the villains in the when you're playing Edward, doing all the pirate shit.
Yeah.
They're still the antagonists, but then you get to like
I know in Viking they don't ever really bring them up.
No, and there are like Assassin's Creed Odyssey, where they're not really there.
Yeah.
From what I remember, like in the modern sections, they're not really there anymore, and when you're doing all the Greek shit and whatever, they're not really there either. Okay. And yeah, they're probably like after the Greeks, but still.
Yeah.
Between the 15th and 18th centuries, thousands of people, mostly women, were tried and executed for alleged witchcraft. These trials weren't just about religion, they were about control, fear, and scapegoating.
In countries like Germany and Scotland, entire villages were swept into frenzy. Accusations were often based on hearsay or evidence like owning herbs or having a birthmark.
Let's not forget that many of these so-called witches were actually midwives, healers, or simply women living alone, people who didn't conform.
And the methods of proving guilt? Brutal. We're talking about dunking tests, confessions under torture, and invented witch marks. And if you do want to learn more of in depth about the witch trials, we did cover that
the last episode.
The last episode. So we do go into that a lot more in that one.
Fast forward to the 80s and the 90s, the courtroom is once again the stage, this time during the Satanic Panic. One of the most infamous cases, the McMartin Preschool trial in California.
A daycare was accused of ritual satanic abuse based on recovered memories from children, many of which were coached or suggested through leading questions during therapy.
There was zero physical evidence, but the case dragged on for 7 years and cost over $15 million. In the end, no one was convicted, but the damage was already done.
And another tragic case, the West Memphis Three. 3 teenage boys were convicted of murdering 3 children in 1993. The only real evidence, they wore black, listened to metal, and one had read about the occult.
Damien Eccles spent 18 years on death row. They were eventually released after DNA evidence failed to link them to the scene. But again, it was a fear of the occult that fueled the prosecution.
Did you happen to hear about this one? The West Memphis Three?
Kinda.
So, as I've mentioned before, I listen to a lot of Morbid. One of the girls that does Morbid, or hosts Morbid, she talks about this one a lot, and she covers it, she keeps up with it, all that stuff. This, guys, y'all should really look into this one. This one is so beyond messed up, and the police that were in charge of this, or the sheriffs who were in charge of this, messed up so bad. There was evidence that there was another man there covered in blood who had come into town shortly before everybody started kind of looking for these kids. And I mean, the just brutal attack on these 3 boys and all this stuff and all this evidence kept coming out. And there was no way it was these kids. One of them wasn't even fully mentally there. And they just kept going and going and going on this kid, trying to get him to answer how they wanted him to answer. And I mean, they somehow lost evidence. How do you lose evidence as a police, station? I know it happens a lot, but
say the same way now how they lose evidence for a lot of things these days.
It's just, y'all really need to look into that one. That one is so tragic. Oh my Lord. I feel so bad for those kids, dude. Even today, accusations of witchcraft and sorcery land people in prison or worse in parts of Africa, India, and Papua New Guinea.
Laws in some countries still list black magic or occult crimes as a punishable offense. That's not a relic. That's happening right now.
They would hate to see my bookshelf. When fear is greater than facts, justice doesn't stand a chance. And in the 1980s, that fear reached a fever pitch.
Next up, we're diving into the wildfire that was the Satanic Panic, how a single book, a lot of misinformation, and a media frenzy kicked off one of the strangest moral crusades in modern history. If the Middle Ages had witch trials, the 1980s had something just as frenzied. A modern-day moral panic that turned playgrounds, therapists' office, and courtrooms into hunting grounds for imagined evil.
Enter the Satanic Panic. Great band name, by the way. A mass hysteria rooted in fear of devil worship, secret cults, and ritual abuse, all hiding in plain sight in everyday America, or so people believed. The spark that lit the fire was Michelle Remembers, published in 1980. It claimed to be the true story of a woman who, through therapy, uncovered repressed memories of horrific satanic rituals she'd endured as a child.
Written by psychiatrist Lawrence Pasder and his patient and later wife, Michelle Smith, the book described human sacrifices, demonic symbols, and multi-generational satanic cults.
It was all false, but that didn't matter. It was a national bestseller. It appeared on talk shows, it was treated as fact, and people panicked. I don't know about you, but it sounds a little biased there.
Just a little bit. The fear that children were being abused in satanic rituals hit hard. The most infamous case, the McMartin Preschool trial, which we touched on earlier.
But it wasn't alone. From coast to coast, daycares were accused of burying children alive, hosting animal sacrifices, or even flying through the air during rituals. I'm not kidding.
And most of these stories came from children in therapy using controversial recovered memory techniques. Many therapists, though well-meaning, unintentionally implanted ideas.
Lives were destroyed, reputations shattered, and no physical evidence ever turned up. The Satanic Panic was built almost entirely on fear and suggestion.
Pop culture didn't help either. Heavy metal bands like Judas Priest, Ozzy Osbourne, and Slayer were accused of hiding satanic messages in their lyrics.
People claimed to hear demonic phrases when playing records backwards, a phenomenon called backmasking. Spoiler alert, it was mostly gibberish.
Even Dungeons and Dragons were dragged into it. Critics said it promoted witchcraft and suicide, despite there being no link between the game and harm.
I remember that one. The irony, all of this actually made occult and satanic imagery more appealing to teenagers. Bands leaned into it, goth and punk subcultures exploded. It became religion by aesthetic. I do want to add, though, out of all of the music industry, all of them would come out in articles or not interrogations, interviews, same thing, interviews saying basically, yes, we're leaning into it, but we don't condone y'all doing shit under that.
Yeah. About like the D&D thing, it reminds me of one of my friends. His parents are like heavy on the religion.
Mm-hmm.
And so growing up,
You made that sound like a drug.
Well, I don't know how else to put it. Very religious people. One of the things he wasn't allowed to do growing up was Halloween.
Yeah.
Because in their eyes, it was a pagan holiday and it was a bad thing because of witchcraft and all the spooky shit. And boo.
Which is hilarious because the Puritans were one of the ones that started it with the masks. Yeah.
I just thought that would kind of relate.
You say that, and I remember my first year of college, one of my dorm mates, her family was so religious that she was not allowed to watch anything with witches in it. So none of the Harry Potters, nothing with like fantastical ideas. So she was never allowed to watch like Mary Poppins, The Wizard of Oz, nothing like that. One of the big things that kind of shocked everybody was that, granted, I had never seen it either, but that she was never allowed to watch, what's the dude with the Goblin King? Anyways, that movie.
That's very vague.
They'll know. The Goblin King that steals the baby to get Sarah, the hoodoo. Anyways, they'll know what that means. That movie, and everybody was so shocked that they literally forced her to sit there and watch it. Yeah.
Eventually, the FBI, led by Agent Kenneth Lanning, launched investigations into these supposed satanic cults.
After years of digging, interviews, and case reviews, their conclusion was clear. No evidence of organized satanic ritual abuse existed in the United States.
But that didn't stop the momentum. Politicians, talk shows, and church leaders kept the panic going. It wasn't until the late 90s that the fever finally started to break.
This satanic panic left a lot of damage in its wake. Families torn apart, innocent people imprisoned, and deeper wedge between alternative spirituality and mainstream society.
It also shaped how Americans view the occult to this day. Even now, symbols like pentagrams, tarot cards, or sigils still make some people nervous. Not because what they are, but because what they've been taught to fear.
Before we move into the next section, what did you know about the occult and satanic panic before we started doing all this? Like, what would you like to add that you think is either insane or whatever?
So with the Satanic Panic, I've kind of heard about it through like passing of like different social media
Yeah.
and like history, looking into some history stuff. And from what I gathered was that it was just a lot of people saying things
Mm-hmm.
because I guess it was like the thing to do, especially from like religious leaders.
Yeah.
Because, they're always trying to get people to come join their church and all that stuff. And they're like, oh, if you don't do this, you're going to go to hell and blah, 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 blah.
Hellfire and brimstone.
Hellfire and brimstone. Things like pentagrams. Like you see them all over the place in some things. Like you said earlier, music.
Mm-hmm.
You'll see them in TV shows and all that other jazz.
And just random kids putting it on buildings.
Scrolling through the school note textbooks, and there's a pentagram sitting there. Or whatever. Tarot cards. I kind of knew. I had a friend in high school who had some. I told my grandma about it, and she said a lot of things I've heard from my grandma. She told me just not to mess with them because she grew up during that time. So a lot of the things she fears is what she had listened to as she was growing up.
Which is ironic with who you're with now.
Yeah.
I have two of them right there. I grew up, of course, I grew up in the 90s and the early 2000s was when I was a child. And I remember so many TV shows were still like hitting on the satanic panic part. Where like, because I grew up watching like Law and Order, NCIS, Bones, stuff like that, because that's what my parents were into. So of course I watched it, right?
Yeah.
And of course, not SVU. The things where they go and see the aliens in the TV show. X-Files, there we go. But there was always at least 2 episodes that I remember from each of these shows that touch on people being like, oh, they were satanic cults. They're ritualizing people in the forest. Oh, no,
Yeah.
And I think that's hilarious because even in the 90s and like early 2000s, I feel like there's something on my face, they were still talking about it and still kind of making jokes about it. And I remember even when I was like young, oh, rock music's for the devil. That's devil music. That always makes me laugh when I see that in TV shows and stuff where they're like, oh no, you can't be listening to that no good rock music. Can't do that.
Yeah. It's all just the older generations, just because that's what they grew up with. Or like you're saying with like the TV shows, like the Ghost Hunter shows, like Ghost Adventures, or what was the other one? There was like 2 popular ghost hunting shows, and they talk about like some of the episodes, like, oh, they did satanic rituals here, and that's why there's ghosts here and all that shit, and blah 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 blah. Or and I watched those shows because that's what my grandma put on when she was watching us.
Yeah.
So it's also part of how I know about these things.
Yeah. So let's continue. How did all of this panic spread so fast? A big part of the blame lies in the books, the news stories, and so-called experts that fanned the flames.
Coming up next, we're breaking down the most influential books and media that pushed the occult into the spotlight and the panic into overdrive.
You know the saying, the pen is mightier than the sword. Well, in the case of satanic panic and the rise of occult awareness, the pen wasn't just mighty, it was explosive.
This section's all about books, articles, and so-called experts who helped stir the cauldron, and a few who helped bring the boiling down to a simmer.
First up, the mother of modern moral panic, as we've talked about, Michelle Remembers, by Lawrence Pasdar and Michelle Smith.
This book hit shelves in 1980 and claimed to document Michelle's real-life recovered memories of being abused in a satanic cult. Everything from ritual torture to demonic possession.
Totally debunked, by the way, but it did matter. It influenced therapists, police, social workers, and church leaders. It was even used as a training tool by law enforcement.
Another fire starter, Satan's Underground by Lauren Stratford, a similar book that claimed firsthand experience in occult abuse. Spoiler again, she later admitted it wasn't true.
These stories played perfectly into the growing anxiety of the time. Strangers, child endangerment, the war on drugs, the culture wars, it all wrapped into one big red horned nightmare.
But while panic spread like wildfire, actual occult philosophy was being published and studied too, and that freaked people out even more.
Books like The Secret Teachings of All Ages by Manly P. Hall or The Book of the Law by Aleister Crowley weren't new, but they were rediscovered by the counterculture and New Age movements in the 60s and 70s.
Add in the Kabbalah, something like I don't know, text on Kabbalah, ritual magic, and Hermeticism, and you had a whole spiritual ecosystem developing outside mainstream religion.
These weren't manuals for summoning demons, they were often symbolic, philosophical, or spiritual. But in the wrong hands or misunderstood by the public, they added fuel to the fire. And of course, Aleister Crowley will always be right in the middle of that because everybody looks at his books like it's the worst thing that could ever happen. And a lot of kids do go to the Crowley books because I believe that's not the only one he's done, and kind of they get drawn to it because it's something different.
The media played a huge role in the panic. Sensational headlines like "Satanic cults in your backyard" or "Teen kills for the devil" grabbed attention, even when the facts were flimsy.
I love old news story headlines. They're great. Shows like 2020, Geraldo, and Oprah ran segments featuring so-called survivors, experts, and dramatic reenactments, often without any verification.
Even publications like Time and Newsgeek gave space to the panic, reinforcing that this wasn't just a tabloid drama, it was a full-blown cultural movement.
Thankfully, there were also voices pushing back. One was Kenneth Lanning, the FBI agent who thoroughly investigated claims of ritual abuse and found no organized satanic cults.
His reports were critical in shifting public opinion. Even if they didn't get as much airtime as the panic, scholars, journalists, and legal experts eventually helped expose the fraud behind many of these claims.
And then in 2014, Satanic Panic Pulp Culture Paranoia in the 1980s was published, a retrospective anthology that pulled the curtain back on the chaos. It's one of the best modern breakdowns of what really went down.
Books and media didn't just report on the panic, they inspired it, and they mirrored it too.
Up next, we're taking a deep dive into how movies, TV shows, music, and games reflected and reshaped the way we think about the occult and satanic fear. If fear drives curiosity, then pulp culture has always been both a mirror and a megaphone, reflecting society's fear of the occult while feeding it at the same time.
Movies, shows, books, and games didn't invent the satanic panic or fear of the occult, but they definitely helped shape how we imagine it. Dark robes, secret rituals, glowing symbols, and whispering cults hidden in plain sight.
Let's go back to 1968, Rosemary's Baby drops, and boom, the occult becomes mainstream horror. It wasn't just about ghosts or monsters anymore, it was about the conspiracy, paranoia, and hidden evil.
Then came The Exorcist in 1973, based on supposedly true possession case. It terrified audiences, broke box office records, and gave the Catholic Church a PR bump.
By the time The Omen landed in 1976, Satan himself had become a pulp culture icon. Damien, the Antichrist child, became a symbol of the occult going domestic, right into your home and nursery.
These films didn't create the satanic panic, but they just primed the public to believe that the devil could be anywhere, and that his followers looked just like your neighbors. In the 80s and early 90s, daytime TV was basically a breeding ground for occult fear. Geraldo Rivera ran a now infamous special called Devil Worship, Exposing Satan's Underground, featuring everything from inverted crosses to claims of human sacrifice.
You know, if you didn't put the devil worship, you could take that title as something totally different.
Mm-hmm.
It was it was pure shock TV, no fact checking, just fear mongering, and millions of viewers tuned in.
Meanwhile, shows like Unsolved Mysteries and America's Most Wanted aired segments about supposed cult rituals or ritual crimes, which kept the fear alive even when the cases were based on speculation.
Just like I was talking about earlier. And we can't forget games. Dungeons and Dragons was labeled as a gateway to the occult, blamed for everything from suicide to demon worship, despite being a tabletop game about dice and imagination.
In the 2000s, video games like Doom, Silent Hill, Diablo, and Persona stirred things up again, not because they promoted occultism, but because they used it used its aesthetics, symbols, demons, rituals, and shadowy lore.
Even The Sims eventually had spellcasters and seances. It's everywhere, but in a more stylized, curiosity-driven way than the fear-drenched hysteria of the 80s.
I always think it's funny. Like, I've listened to some stories on YouTube about people growing up playing the original Doom,
Mm-hmm.
and how like their parents or their grandparents are like, "Oh, don't play it. You're gonna turn to the devil and blah 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 blah." Even though in the game you're killing demons with a bunch of guns and a
Oh, but it
chainsaw,
looks bad.
but it looks bad just because there's corpses and blood and, like I said,
Screaming.
demons screaming. They have the pentagrams. I don't think they had any upside down crosses from what I remembered, what I've played.
I feel like there had to have been, because I remember playing one of the earliest ones. I think it was, what we figure out, it was 96 or 98 that I played.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I remember there being something like that.
Yeah. But like modern Doom from like 2016 now, they're less on the occult magic stuff. Like, it's still there, but a lot of it's also like science fiction-y.
Yeah.
So like a lot of the demons from like the 2016 Doom and Doom Eternal.
Yeah.
The demons all have like, not all the demons, but most of them, some of them have like rocket packs that shoot rocket missiles at you, or
Okay.
they have guns, built into their arm. And then there's a cyber demon, which is a demon that's a cyborg.
So it's more Gears of War style than original
Well, I
Doom.
wouldn't say Gears of War style, but yeah, it's more science fiction with occult. Like another game that I like, the Zombie Army games. 1, 2, 3 leaned heavily into the occult stuff.
Yeah.
Like, you had to go find books. You find this ancient like relic. They used like satanic magic pretty much to bring back dead soldiers as zombies.
Yeah.
And then in Zombie Army 4, it leaned less into the occult and more into like the science fiction-y kind of stuff.
Now that you've said that, because I know what that game is. Didn't the Nazis kind of lean into some occult stuff?
So during World War II,
because I feel like I remember this.
during World War II, the Nazis did a lot of crazy things to try and help them win the war. So they like did wonder weapons. They did all kinds of stuff. They also
a lot of weird shit.
A lot of weird stuff. They looked into the occultism stuff.
Yeah.
I don't think any of it really went anywhere, but a lot of them, they just try to find like ancient relics and all this other stuff that would help them win the war and all that stuff.
So they became a more modern Knights of the Templar, searching for shit that they shouldn't have been searching for.
Kinda, yeah.
Gotcha.
They also other game like the original Wolfenstein series.
I've heard of those. I haven't done anything with them.
The Nazis also kind of leaned into the occult magic stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So they like Return to Castle Wolfenstein, I think, is one of the 3D games.
Yeah.
And there's like some enemies that do magic and stuff. I don't know. I've never played it. I've played a little bit of the original Wolfenstein and the newer reboot series.
Mm-hmm.
It's all science fiction. There's not a speck of occultism except for the DLC for what was the first Wolfenstein reboot game, where they had zombies and a big like it was a creature. I don't remember what it was.
Yeah.
But it has like the final boss, but it wasn't really, that was about it. Gotcha. That was the only like magic occultism stuff that they had, but the rest was all science fiction.
Gotcha. Okay.
Music might have gotten the worst of it. Metal bands like Slayer, Venom, and Black Sabbath leaned into occult imagery, goats, pentagrams, the works.
Not to mention the infamous accusations of backmasking. I always think that says blackmasking. Backmasking supposedly satanic messages when songs were played in reverse. Most of it was just noise or inside jokes. Didn't they say that the guys who walked on the crosswalk that were British, didn't they say that their records did that?
The Beatles?
Yes.
Yeah. They say that about everyone. Those really crazy conspiracy theory people, they say that about every famous musician. From like Beyonce, the Beatles, everybody. If they're famous, their music is going big and whatever, it's like, oh, they sold their soul to the devil and blah, 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 blah. That's why they're so famous. I don't know. Maybe it's just people like their music.
Can I sell mine for some fame? Because if that's how that works, it sounds pretty easy.
I'll sell mine for a box of 10-piece nuggets.
Oh my god.
But musicians like Marilyn Manson and even David Bowie played with esoteric symbols, astrology, or chaos magic in their aesthetics, and were called out for it.
Hey, you can't call out David Bowie. I'm sorry. Everybody loves David Bowie. Eventually, though, the fear turned into fascination. Occult symbolism became more about identity, power, and rebellion than worship or fear.
These days, pop culture has flipped the narrative. Shows like Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, American Horror Story, Coven, and The Witch explore the occult with nuance, even sympathy.
People are embracing tarot, astrology, and ancestral magic not as evil, but as empowerment. The fear is fading, and what's left is curiosity, tradition, and spiritual connection. So the question becomes, where do we draw the line between story and belief, between inspiration and panic?
Coming up next, we're looking at how communities around the world still wrestle with these themes, whether through tradition, superstition, or underground practice.
So far, we've talked about fear, we've talked about fiction. Now let's talk about the real deal. The occult isn't just some dusty idea from ancient grimoires or a 1980s media frenzy. For millions of people across the globe, these beliefs and practices are part of daily life.
And they're not hiding in the shadows. They're in open rituals, bookstores, festivals, TikToks, and even official census results. Take Brazil, for example. You'll find practices like candomblé
Candomblé?
and umbanda, which blend African traditional religions, Catholic saints, and indigenous elements.
Also, we're really sorry for how we pronounce things. We have them typed out and we forget to always put the little pronunciation thingies in them. I'll get better at that. These these aren't fringe cults. They're respected spiritual systems with rituals, transpossession, offerings, and ancestral worship. Outsiders often label them occult, but for practitioners, it's sacred.
Same goes for Santeria in Cuba and voodoo in Haiti. Misrepresented in horror films, these religions are deeply rooted in heritage, healing, and community.
In India, elements that Westerners call occult are interwoven with daily religious practice. Tantra, for example, isn't just about sex magic. It's a vast system of ritual, meditation, and metaphysical philosophy.
Ooh.
Jyotish?
Jyotish or Vedic astrology still influences everything from marriage to business decisions, and many rural communities use local healers or tantrics who blend herbalism, mantra, and ritual in ways that echo global magical traditions.
Japan might surprise people too. Behind the tech and skyscrapers, you'll find Shinto shrine rituals, fe- ghost festivals like Oban, and esoteric Buddhist sects like Shingon, which involve mantras, mandalas, and fire ceremonies.
There's also a growing interest in urban mysticism, mystic, I can't say that word,
Mysticism.
mysticism, a mix of New Age ideas, folklore, and Western magic adapted for modern life. Tarot, crystals, and energy readings are becoming more mainstream.
And then, of course, back in the West, what used to be labeled devil worship is now being reclaimed. Wicca, chaos magic, and occult revival movements are more visible than ever.
People are connecting with lunar cycles, herbalism, divination, ancestor work, often as a way to reclaim spirituality outside of organized religion.
You'll find meetups, online covens, indie bookstores with spell signs, and digital witchcraft communities on TikTok and Discord. It's spiritual, personal, and not always spooky.
It's important to say real occult practice today doesn't involve human sacrifice or dark rituals. That's leftover panic talk.
Most practitioners focus on intention setting, inner work, symbolic ritual, and honoring unseen forces, whether through candles, sigils, prayer, or ancestral altars.
In other words, it's not about fear, it's about meaning. In a world that's loud and chaotic, these quiet rituals offer comfort, power, and purpose.
Um, I do want to say before we move out of this, in my own, because we've talked about this before, in my own spirituality, because I cannot think of the word, identify as Norse pagan, and I have for quite a few years now. Um, for me, it is more about kind of healing with myself and figuring out how to go through life than satanic shit or things that go against other people. Um, the people who go after other people or try to use their spirituality like this for bad things or anything like that are not really in it for what I would say like the mainstream of people are in. And those kind of people are the ones that are still pushing that whole satanic panic feel. And I feel like they're the ones who are pushing, the Christian section to still hate on and still push away the people who are pagan and Wiccan and all these other things. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. I mean, a lot of, like I said, like the uber religious people, church, they don't miss it every Sunday.
They're not going to change.
They're not going to change. They're set in their ways. And when it comes to stuff like that, you might as well just be talking to a brick wall, because at least it'll understand you better.
And that's no hate. Everybody can believe what they want.
Yeah.
But there's truth in this, unfortunately.
Yeah. Like I said, my friends and his parents are heavy Catholics.
Yeah.
So of course, Halloween's a no. I'm sure he wasn't allowed to play certain video games growing up because of the stuff they had in them.
Yeah.
But I think now he's kind of not as, like, he's kind of moved away from it.
Yeah.
Like, he still goes to church, I think, and all that stuff, but he's not going to be like, oh, you're going to go to hell because you don't believe in God and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And then like other, mostly like Christian religions are the ones mostly like, oh, paganism and Wicca and all that other stuff, still black magic and Satan and all that other shit. So
yeah, I get that.
Like you said, no hate towards any
no
particular religion. It's just that you're gonna not change these people's minds.
Yeah. Okay, so from ancient temples to suburban bedrooms lit by candlelight, the occult is alive, not as a threat, but as a thread connecting us to mystery, meaning, and the past.
As long as people keep asking questions and looking to the stars, the occult will always have a place in our collective story. Even in the 21st century, the occult isn't without controversy. While many embrace it as a spiritual path, others still view it with suspicion, and sometimes with very real consequences.
For example, some countries still criminalize occult practices like we've talked, labeling them as witchcraft or black magic, punishable by fines, imprisonment, or worse.
In parts of Africa, South Asia, and the Middle East, accusations of witchcraft can lead to violence or social ostracism, especially against women and marginalized groups.
And even in Western countries, misunderstandings persist. There are occasional moral panics linking occult symbolism to crime or violence, often fueled by social media rumors.
And then there's the debate within spiritual communities about cultural appropriation, ethics of magic, and how to practice responsibly without exploiting traditions.
Plus, the rise of online occult content has brought both accessibility and misinformation, with some people promoting dangerous rituals or scams under the guise of spirituality.
At the end of the day, the occult remains a complex and deeply personal subject, intertwined with history, culture, and the human experience.
As we wrap up this deep dive into the history and culture of the occult and Satanic Panic, we want to hear from you. Your stories, questions, and thoughts. Echoes of the Past is more than just a podcast, it's a community.
That's right. If you have any fascinating stories you want to share, sponsorship opportunities to discuss, or topic ideas you think we should explore, we'd love to hear from you.
Just send us an email at echoesofthepast.pod@gmail.com. We do read every message and can't wait to connect with you.
Your input helps shape the show, and who knows, your suggestion might be the next episode we dive into. Thanks for wandering through history with us on Echoes of the Past.
If you liked what you heard, subscribe, rate us, and tell that one friend who still quotes fun facts at parties.
And remember, history may repeat itself,
but we promise not to.
See you in the next Echo.